Well, good morning and welcome to our 9th Government Symposium. I think the first one we did was in a Starbucks. So by the looks of this room, it seems like the message is getting out there, and we appreciate all of the attendees here. And kind of a testimony to what's going on with Red Hat in particular, but more about what's happening with open source in general in the industry. And at a time when the pace of change in IT is faster than ever, open source has been the engine that has been fueling this innovation. So I think open source has really come of age. And most of the innovation in cloud is open source, right? And if you follow Jim Cramer from CNBC's Mad Money, he likes to call Red Hat the cloud handyman. So the handyman for everything, I think, from ops to dev. Our beginnings, of course, with Linux really focused on the operational side of things. But what you'll hear today is a lot more on the dev side as well. Steve O'Grady from Red Monk. Has anyone read The New Kingmakers? It's a book my sales team loves because it's only 48 pages long. But the subtitle is How Developers Have Conquered the World. And basically, they're using open source to do that. And he says everything in software development right now is all around open source. So it's been a big emancipator for developers. So Red Hat is our continued efforts to make open source easy to consume over the last, 23 years by making it supportable, making it lifecycle managed, especially for the government. That's been our focus here for the last 13 years since we started this public sector vertical within the company. Our speakers today will be discussing a wide variety of open source impact on things like IT optimization, modernization, containers, automation, DevOps, hybrid cloud. But I think specifically for the government, and the first time we've actually talked about this, is today we're proud to demonstrate a continued commitment to government by launching what we call Red Hat Stateside Support. And with stateside support, Red Hat customers can operate with confidence that their technical support is coming directly from the US, from US citizens on US soil. And if you visit our booth outside, we've got some folks from our customer experience team that can give you a little bit more information on what that means, but it will have impact on both our cloud customers and our on-prem customers. But what I want to focus on here for these few minutes of remarks is two things that I think will be thematic from what you'll hear in a lot of the conversations today through all of today's sessions. And that is that open source is the best source for choice and security. I'm trying to see if that will trend. I didn't get that approved by Brand, but open source is the best source for choice and security. So let's talk a little bit about choice. The promise of open source over the years has been really to protect from lock-in, and we're hearing that a lot more in government circles as the cloud could potentially be the mother of all lock-in, right? But really, the promise of open source is about freedom and the freedom to explore and change as technology evolves. So decisions that you make today don't lock you into an architecture for the next 10 years. So one of the hot technologies in cloud right now are containers. And compelling in themselves, they are, but at scale, containers aren't very interesting if you don't have a way to orchestrate them. So true to the open source philosophy, where no one is smarter than everyone, it seems like everyone was developing their own orchestration strategy. Now, years ago, well, not too long ago, actually, just back in 2015, Red Hat joined the Kubernetes community before it was the cool place to be. And Kubernetes right now is one of the highest velocity projects ever in open source history. And you can go to GitHub to source that out, but one of the highest velocity projects ever in open source history. And Red Hat is very proud to be the #1 contributor to the upstream, with the exception of Google. So what that means is we've got a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom in making all these things work together. Now recently, both Pivotal and Docker announced their support, changing their orchestration strategies to support Kubernetes. So big news there. And Kubernetes creates this insulation layer that allows you to be on any cloud. In a multi-cloud world, you need ways to hedge your bets, choosing the right cloud for the right job at the right time, on-prem or off-prem. And you'll hear more about our container management platform, OpenShift, which includes Kubernetes orchestration and a whole lot more. It's a very mature and robust framework. And I think this is a great example of how open source is the best source for choice. Large, diverse communities creating solutions to complex problems. Now, where open source is the engine that fuels innovation, it does no good if you can't secure it. So my second point is that open source is the best source for security. So back in 2016, former DoD CIO Terry Halverson boldly said, you know, we're going to bring more prescriptive activity into the DoD such that everyone will have to take into the data centers by installing automation tools in the data centers, because having employees monitor and maintain servers is a poor use of labor. And I'll add, at this stage, it's practically insane and rife with potential for lots of human error. So Red Hat, for years, has leveraged community-powered innovation to take open source projects, harden them, and make them ready for enterprise consumption. So more than 10 years ago, we instituted GovSec list for those who needed to comply with US government security. We're finding that creating their own compliance and accreditation strategies didn't scale, and there was a needless duplication of effort. So this list actually involved both government and contractors here in the US to help share best practices. MilOSS later was a kind of a more of a global type of community that addressed military-specific issues. And while we didn't start it, we were a charter member early on. And from that, other programs like SCAP, which is the Security Content Automation Protocol, which was developed by NIST to turn policy into scripts and to automate lockdown of systems. Now, we've used that and created some tooling around that in OpenSCAP such that we are now shipping RHEL out of the box and STIGging within minutes on install, things that used to take days, if not weeks, to do. But even if individual systems are locked down using SCAP, entire deployments need to conform to government standards to get to ATO, right? So these deployments adhere to things like FISMA and 800-53 policies, which require massive amounts of human paperwork. So GSA's 18F created the Open Control Project, and you'll hear a little bit more about that today, to help automate compliance for entire deployments. And as an example, Red Hat, true to fashion in our DNA, love to contribute into these communities. We submit into the catalog of control all the controls needed for, say, something like OpenShift, running on RHEL, running on a particular cloud provider platform, so that we get to ATO faster. So basically, more sharing is good, less humans filling out hundreds of pages of paperwork for compliance. So open source is driving compliance automation, and in that regard, I think is an example of why open source is the best source for security. And 18F actually will be represented here in breakout discussions with our security chief, Sean Wells, later this morning. So I would invite you to sign up for that one if you can. But with that, why take my word for it when we've got a lot of great partners that are represented in the foyer to actually tell the story as well? As a matter of fact, I'm fortunate here today to have great relationship with CSRA, and the president and CEO, Larry Pryor, is here. by just good fortune, he's mic'd up. And I'd like to ask Larry to come up and share some experiences in how open source has helped them modernize and help our customers as well. Larry?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm living the life. When you think about open source and the opportunity it gives you for choice and for security, I want to tell a story about two programs in the national security arena. So one is a recent win that we've got. It's the Department of Defense's MilCloud 2.0, run by DISA. And the second one is a recompete of 10 years of work that we did for one of the intelligence agencies. And it was pretty much, we had everything from the circuit to the desktop. And now we're moving them to what I think of as an elegant architecture based on the cloud. And every day, our company's moving work to Amazon. We got an example where we're putting IL4 kind of controls and data into an IL2 environment. And when I talk about living the life, think of 110 NIST controls, 453 Navy controls, and 100 monitoring points for us to get to an ATO. And every one of us is doing that heavy lifting every day. We love everything around Office 365, everything Microsoft does with Dynamics, and we love putting work into Azure. But for complex enterprises, you got to go with a hybrid cloud. You got to think with these 10-year contracts, our lives are going to change every year for those 10 years. And if you don't have a hybrid approach where your cornerstone is based on open source, you're going to run into problems. You got to have the option of a private cloud where you get to think about choice and you get to think about security. On the choice aspect, think about where you want your workload to be. For many of our customers, they're thinking about command and control. They're thinking about originator-controlled data, ORCON. And they're adamant that they're going to protect that to a higher level of security, and they want the choice of having an on-prem cloud. When you look at the recent work by the White House in advising the president of how we're going to modernize IT, they did a really good job in making the distinction of how do you bring the cloud to government as well as government to the cloud. As you're developing your enterprises, we have to create the flexibility for our government customers where the cornerstone of choice and security is that private cloud, choosing where your work's going to be. Now, I appreciate what Paul said about vendor lock-in. How many of us have been burned by loving a proprietary option? 2 years later, we get the predatory pricing, and we get surprised. Yeah, it is something we have to be concerned about. I think it pales compared to where you want your work and your data to be and how it gives you an advantage as you do your missions that are so important in government. The second aspect that I highlight is security. When you look at your options, what you get with OpenStack, with OpenShift, as you're using Ansible to help with automation, as you're looking for the capabilities he brings to the hypervisor, you're giving yourself a security advantage. And you're not locked into any proprietary code. You've got visibility to 100% of the code set. How many times have you walked in and said, I really want to know what's below that control plane? And there's like 30% of many of your cloud options you're not going to have visibility to. And for our folks who are doing cyber defense today, they got to think about maneuver, and they have to think about active defense real time in their cloud hybrid systems. And you've got to give them that place where they have 100% transparency and they have a complete capability to fight the good fight to defend your networks. Now, don't get me wrong. There's so much work that we can move to IL2, to IL6. We're going to take great advantage of public clouds over the next 10 years. We're going to take great advantage, over the next 10 weeks. But the foundation of that cloud growth, that cornerstone, is having that private cloud on-prem that allows you to take advantage of open source, and nobody does it better than Red Hat. So I am really bullish, and I'm going long on security. I'm very much pro-security, and I am very much pro-choice. Thank you, Red Hat.
Thanks, Larry. I'm sure that's going to get tweeted out that Larry Pryor is pro-security and pro-choice. So, awesome. I think that's a good setup for what to expect for today. Here's the high-level agenda. You've seen it in the programs on your tabletops. Things you'll learn about today include how to make DevOps a reality, modern application development, building hybrid clouds, integration, microservices, automation, security, mobile, and more. We have over 40 speakers here today from government and industry, and some Red Hat luminaries as well. And we'll have 2 breakout sessions that will drill down into 4 tracks. One for the DevOps culture, because a lot of this really just starts with culture and not technology. Then we'll have a track on infrastructure, one on app dev, application development, and then you'll be able to actually see some live demos, a little bit more technical dive by our consultants under a track that we call Solutions in Action. We can't do any of this without our partners. I didn't say sponsors, I said partners. Because for us, our partners truly represent the best of the open source model. We collaborate together with the government on best practices because the best idea is the best idea, no matter where it comes from. This is bigger than Red Hat. This is bigger than the government. It's about industry and government working hand in hand to serve the mission. So we've got a couple handles out there. There's our event hashtag, RHGov, and our Twitter handle is at RedHatGov. So please be social today and let us know how your day is going. I would like to challenge you all to, as the conversations continue today, to share that in open dialogue. In all these sessions, we invite some dialogue, and see how that fares out through the day in terms of justifying the initial point, which was open source as a foundation for choice and security. So with that, I'm only 2 seconds over. That's the best we've ever done. Larry, you're awesome. Now I'm 8 seconds over. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker today, Matt Lira, who is the Special Assistant to the President for Innovation Policy and Initiatives from the Executive Office of the President. And Matt will be speaking to us this morning about something extraordinarily topical on federal government modernization efforts. So I was just reading a quote from Matt just the other day on one of the wires, and he says that collaboration is the way to get things started down the right path, even if many of the parties working together don't always agree. So in this world we live in today, that's really something special, because that, of course, is a key tenet to how open source communities really get things done, healthy debate in diverse communities. So we're happy to get involved. And Matt, thank you for coming, and we look forward to your remarks. Thank you.